This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Thank you so much for joining us. We have a great show for you today, but if it was going to be awful, we wouldn't warn you. You just have to sit through it and find out. Our guest is retired Marine Corps Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Schmiegel, CEO at the social impact company ZeroMils, where he helps Fortune 500 companies build a military thriving culture that hires, values, and retains veterans and military spouses, which is fantastic. I love anybody that's hiring veterans. Kevin founded Hiring Our Heroes at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the American Legion has worked closely with this veteran and military spouse employment nonprofit. It's going to be a fantastic chat, but before Kevin joins us, Stacy's got some history knowledge to share because she's a history buff, or she's actually just buff and we make her do history.
Very buff. Fun fact, Joe, 250 years ago today, the Continental Congress authorized the creation of the Chaplain Corps at the request of General George Washington. Pretty fun. Yep, so July 29th, 1775, each regular regiment was authorized to have one ordained chaplain.
I was 4, by the way. I was 4 years old.
I thought, oh gosh, I thought you were a little younger than that. Serving at the rank of captain, or at least they were at the pay grade of captain. I wonder what the pay grade, like what the pay was back then. Anyway, was it like 2 shillings? And it was
probably like hopes and dreams and promises. Like, listen,
this is war. You're going to get 5 kernels of corn, and you're going to.
We pay you if you make it home.
Many colonial militia units also had chaplains, but the Chaplain Corps was one of the oldest branches, or is one of the oldest branches in the Army, and preceded the Constitution by several years. Pretty fun. Fun fact, obviously we all had chaplains for each unit. I'm sure you did too in the Navy or Marine Corps, you were green. But I remember, so on my last combat deployment, we had just come off a combat operation. By we, I mean myself, and I was attached to a couple of infantry units. I think that one happened to be Bravo or Delta Company of the 1st CAF. And so we're standing around outside the medical center because we had just brought back some wounded folks. And the chaplain walks up, and we're all like strung out, just got back from a fight. And he comes around and he's handing out like these bits of dark chocolate. And he's like, hey, any of you guys smokers? And I mean, we're all like nodding. Yeah, we pretty much go through a carton a day. The stress is real. And we're nibbling on dark chocolate. He's like, well, now's not the time to quit. Smoke those bad boys. It'll make you happier. And I was like, I don't think that's what you should be pushing right now, but I'll go with it. Do you have a good chaplain story, Joe?
Yeah, it's not near as funny. So there I was. No, we right after first assault on Fallujah, and then right before my injury, we had just lost most of my second squad to a suicide bomber, and I had a sort of coming to Jesus moment. We all sort of sat down and got real spiritual, whatever that meant for everybody. Just more reflective and sort of looking inward, and I was trying to find a cross or something that I could just hold and carry around. Just trying to process through everything that we'd been through. And, the chaplain was able to, and he's a Navy chaplain, but he was able to find me a rosary, and I'm not Catholic at all, but, I rolled the beads in my hands, like when I prayed, and it was like really comforting and really great. And then one of my really good friends was Catholic. And so when I got home, that thing that I'd been carrying around and sort of with me since Labor Day, I mailed it to him. So
that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was really sweet because how do you talk to a bunch of Marines and the rare corpsmen and comfort them when they've just gone through something like that? And he did it just right. He just was there. He was present, and he answered questions when he could, and he didn't try to pretend like he had all the answers. He just showed love, which is prime, like top-notch chaplaining. I don't think chaplaining's a word, but I'm going to use it anyway. I just coined it.
I think it sounds great.
I think it was good, and that's what we needed. Was somebody to listen and be there and not put expectations of putting your spirituality into words when so many of us were just sort of floundering at the idea at the time.
So an imam, a Christian, and a rabbi walk into my house. That's not a joke. Seriously, they did. I actually hosted 3 chaplains at my place when we filmed season 2 of After Action for an episode called God and Country. And it was definitely enlightening as to what the chaplains go through. They spend so much of their time being both spiritual and emotional and mental support for us, but who guides them and offers them the same comfort that they offer us. And that was a real interesting question that we dove into, and one that I found really intriguing. But I think the point of it is we are all humans and we all need that support. And that's the one thing I think in this case, General George Washington recognized in his time at a time of need, that every unit needed that kind of support. So shout out to all the chaplains on your big time 250th anniversary, but also America's 250th anniversary, our nation's founding. A very, very special series of celebrations is happening, and it's underway. The American Legion is actively involved in the upcoming United States semi-quincentennial. Listen, I've got this down pat.
I love it.
To celebrate our nation's 250th anniversary. On the 4th, American Legion National Commander James LaCourcier, that's a beautiful name, announced that the American Legion Family USA 250 challenge, which I just registered for. It's a patriotic challenge to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday. And it's encouraging our communities through fitness, wellness, and community service, which I've signed up for community service. I don't know what you're going to do, Joe, but I'm already doing the hours. So it's kind of nice to be able to log them for a good cause. So when you join the challenge, you get a commemorative t-shirt. Mine's going to be I think it's going to be a baby blue in your choice. And you guessed it, it's red, white, or blue, which you can have navy blue if you're not a fan of pale blue. And your registration also supports disabled veterans and military families through the American Legion Veterans and Children Foundation. So it's all a good cause. Over the next year, you can complete 1, 2, or all 3 challenges in all 3 categories, and you can do so as an individual or as a group. So get your posts together and make it happen. Visit legion.org/USA250/challenge. Again, that's legion.org/USA250/challenge. And you can learn more, sign up, get registered, get your teas.
I just want to circle back around and say to all those airmen and soldiers in Bakuba, it is now time to quit. in case you were still using the chaplain's words as an excuse to continue smoking, I'm letting you know that you can quit now. It's okay.
Yes.
You have my permission.
Yes. Go see a chaplain about that.
Go see a chaplain about a different, maybe a different
smoking cessation the VA offers. You can do it.
All right, Alphas, please stick around. We'll be back with Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Schmiegel right after the break.
The American Legion is raising awareness about PTSD and veteran suicide by offering hope, camaraderie, and support.
Be the one to help end veteran suicide.
Be the one to save one veteran.
Be the one to ask a veteran in your life how they're doing.
Be the one to reach out when a veteran is struggling.
Go to betheone.org and help the American Legion end veteran suicide.
Will you be the one?
She has a tick. She does that every time. All right, Alphas. Today we're joined by DC-based Marine Corps veteran Kevin Schmiegel. He's a mission-based focus leader whose post-service focus has been on strengthening communities and bridging civilian service divide. Kevin, we really are so happy to have you here. Thank you, and welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Joe and Stacy. I'm really excited to talk to you and your listeners and your viewers and
stalkers.
Yeah.
Mainly Joe's stalkers, but hey, Kevin, welcome to the show. And also, most importantly, thank you for your service. I like to get to know our guests a little bit, not just what we can read in a bio, because those are really, really important. But I think it's really good to know what got you to that point. So what I like to know, where are you from originally? Were you the first in your family to serve? Why the Marines? Like, did you have a significant moment in your career? How was your transition? I know that's a lot to throw at you, but I think we've got time. Let's do
Great.
this.
Well, I like this question to start just because I think our history is our future. My dad served in the Marine Corps in the 60s, so everyone knows what it was like to serve during the Vietnam era. I was actually born in Camp Pendleton, California, in the Oceanside Naval Hospital, the old one, not the
Oh,
new one
nice.
there.
Oh.
Yeah. And then my dad, when he got out of the Marine Corps, settled back on the East Coast. He grew up in Long Island with my mom. And after a couple of years in a 2-bedroom apartment with my brother and sister and my parents, my dad got a job that allowed us to move to a town called Toms River, New Jersey. So I consider Toms River, New Jersey, my hometown. Grew up on the Jersey Shore, listening to Bruce and Bon Jovi. And most people think that I decided to serve because of my dad. And the truth is, my mom played a big part in that as well.
I thought you were going to say Bon Jovi played a
yeah,
part.
well, or Bruce. But the truth is, I had 5 brothers and sisters, big Catholic family. And my mom really instilled in me the value of service, volunteering at the church and food banks and in community service projects. And as much as I wanted to be like my dad, I think my mom's influence on me was the biggest reason I decided to serve. I went to a Catholic university, a small Jesuit school called the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Mass. And I often tell the story of a Jesuit priest. Right after I graduated OCS, it was the fall of 1988. I was about to be a Marine. I just needed to graduate and stay out of trouble, right, Joe? Just not stay the course. And it was a Tuesday in November. And in Worcester, Massachusetts, when it's that time of year, if it rains, especially when it gets down to like 34, 33 degrees, the rain would hit a tree or a building or the ground, and it would instantly turn to ice. So I can remember I'm walking back from drill, and I have this service uniform on. We were midshipmen at the time, so it was black with a white cover. I'm walking up the hill, and I could feel the rain hitting my cover and pelting it and making this sound, and actually freezing to the cover. So my head was down, and I was having these doubts about serving, about my decision to serve. All my friends were getting accepted to law school and med school and going to get their MBAs or big time jobs in Boston or New York or Philly or LA even. And I was having doubts like, am I making the right decision? And in that moment, this legendary priest named Father Lebrand, who actually wears a different hat, Joe, not the hat that I'm wearing or you're wearing.
Good
he had
hat,
this
though.
Stetson. He's in his 70s. He had a Stetson. Everyone could see him on campus in a cane. And he could see me looking down. And he yelled out in this loud, booming Irish brogue, "What's troubling you, my son?" And I looked up and I saw him, and he was just a few feet away. So I shared with him the challenges that I was having, the doubts that I was having. And he just let it linger. And he touched me on the shoulder and he said, "We are all called to serve in different ways." And he just kept walking, and his cane hitting the ground. And ever since, that's been my guidepost. So 20 years in the Marine Corps, a decade leading nonprofits, and now a social impact service disabled veteran-owned business is probably doing more than a lot of nonprofits in our space. So I've been called to serve in different ways. That's been a guidepost ever since. And when I don't serve, I'm not the same person. So my time in the Marine Corps is just one chapter. I think we have to look at it that way. And I will tell you, there were Marines that had doubts that I shared that same story with. And I will tell you, when I was running nonprofits and I was run down and tired, and even in this business, and I felt like quitting, there would be a message from Father Lebrand tapping me on the shoulder saying, "We're all called to serve in different ways." That could be a 23-year-old sergeant when I was the founder of Hiring Our Heroes, who I met at a hiring fair. I literally had talked to my wife and kids saying, "This is the last one." And he came up to me that day and said, "Sir, you changed my life today. I got a job." And that was like Father Lebrand saying, "No, you got to keep on going." So
Oh
Like a
wow.
drug.
Well, thanks, Father Lebrand. Is he still kicking?
he is not.
Okay.
But anyone that went to Holy Cross, over 3 decades when he was there remembers him and the impact that he made. And Jesuit universities at large instill the same value of service that the Marine Corps did in me, and the Air Force did in you, Stacy, and Navy in you, Joe.
It's like
You
well, I'm sorry,
mentioned.
Joe.
No, I was just going to add that, you mentioned that when you said that to him, he sat on it for a second. And we were talking about that earlier with chaplains. Like the best chaplains are the ones that just make you feel loved and listened to. And so in
Mhm.
that moment, he probably knew exactly what to say to you, but he wanted you to sit and think about it. Because sometimes when you ask a question out loud, you realize what you want. You realize what you're looking for. Sometimes it's just saying it out loud to someone who makes you feel listened to can really open up your heart.
Well, and I wanted to say as well is it's incredible how one person can have this sort of ripple effect. And he touched your life and helped you make that decision, but not just in that moment, but throughout your life. And how many shoulders did you touch throughout your time in mentorship and outreach, and they're touching somebody else? And it's so profound how we can do that for each other. Thanks for sharing that.
Amen.
So 20 years in the Marine Corps. That's incredible, man. That's too many. I say that with love. So what, you've talked about this idea of service, and you switch into that military mindset to civilian military divide. Like there's a gap there. And for somebody like me who was dealing with injury and trying to figure out, how to be a father and a half decent husband just to hold it together, and you see that gap, and it's very difficult to find out what to do with that. But it sounds like to me you saw that gap as something that needed to be filled and not something that needed to be navigated. And I think that's a trap that I got myself caught into. And so my fall into nonprofit was I've always been teachable. So for me, when I realized that this worked for me, I held on to it for dear life. But it seems to me like you saw a problem and said, let's start digging in and fix this. And so how did that journey for you lead to founding Hiring Our Heroes and now leading ZeroMils? How did that happen? Like, how did you go from seeing that problem and saying, let's fix it, instead of like every other person who just has to navigate around that to mind the gap?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could start with it's the wisdom of years, right? My age, my experience, and being a little bit retrospective and looking back. If someone asked me and to describe in less than 9 words, like what Father Lebrand said to me, which is a guidepost, if they asked me what my life's work is, I would say it's to bridge the civilian military divide. Again, I'm 58 in a few weeks. I'm looking back now, and I can say, in truth, that's what I was called to do all my life. If I were to be honest, I think I was part of creating the civilian military divide when I served as a Marine for 20 years. Because if you think about our community, if you think about when you're serving, who are you going to rely on when you move 6 times in 11 years with your kids over those 20 years? Who are you going to rely on if you deploy to 50 countries and you spend 1,000 nights away from your kids? You're always going to rely on the people to your right and your left and your front and your back. And we create part of the divide. So if I were to go back, I would take time and take pause to reach out to my civilian neighbors and not look for sympathy or pity. That is not my mantra. I would try to create understanding and empathy about service, and I would share my stories openly. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people say, "Thank you for your service. Does it mean anything?" Well, the civilian is starting. That's a start of a conversation. And we have to reach halfway across the bridge to close that gap and share our stories in an open way. And when someone says that to me, I thank them and say something that's funny, like, well, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. It kept me out of trouble. But then I lead with, do you want to hear more? And listen, there are some common denominators, some common experiences that we share, like we're all a kid or we all have kids or both. Like, so the fact that my kids went through multiple deployments, multiple moves, had to say goodbye to old friends, say hello to new ones, reassimilate, and we did it as a family. I'm not looking for sympathy or pity. I'm looking for understanding and empathy. And that is how we bridge the divide. So
Connection.
right, connection,
Yeah.
and looking people in the eye and sharing our stories, because then they go beyond, and then they're not afraid to ask the next question and the next question and the next question. And we break down these barriers and these obstacles. So hiring our heroes, we bridge the civilian military divide in the workplace. We created understanding with employers, not sympathy. I used to bite my tongue when an employer said, hey, we're doing the right thing. 3 years later, they realized it was right for their businesses. That is why we drove down veteran unemployment from 10% to 3% today, from 2011 to today.
Like it was a charity thing of sorts, like they were hiring into. I just want you to expand on that, because I want to understand. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. When they say we're doing the right thing, did you get the impression that they were saying, hey, this may cost us in the short term, it might be worth it in the long run, and it's the right thing to do, so we'll do it anyway? And then they were like, oh, wait, actually, these guys are fantastic, and gals.
Yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, yes. But let's go back to when I was a Marine, because the reason I started hiring our heroes was largely for enlisted Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardians, sentinels. It wasn't really designed for officers and staff and COs.
And especially not warrant officers.
Yeah. It was really focused on what I knew to be true. And when I was the head of enlisted assignments, the monitors, the people who assigned 172,000 Marines worldwide, the 60 men and women, the senior most people in their occupational fields, we would go around the world and re-enlist Marines too. During a time of war, we re-enlisted 1,100 Marines in Iraq. The fact is, Marines, only 1 out of every 4 Marines stays after their first term. And I would do exit interviews with close to 8,000 kids a year, going all around the country, telling them where they were going to be assigned, but also saying goodbye to 75% of these first termers.
Mm.
And each one of them, without exception, when I asked them, so what are you going to do next? What's your plan? Sir, I don't know. I'm tired. I'm going home.
Wow.
And I'll figure it out when I get there. So let's put that in perspective, and then fast forward from 2007, when I left that job, to 2011, when I founded Hiring Our Heroes. And there was this thought in my mind that how can we talk to employers? Because when I left the Marine Corps in 2009, I was the chief of staff of the chamber, and CEOs were saying all the time that veterans were valued in the workforce. So when we talk about the divide, right, the fact is there were 1 million unemployed veterans in 2011, right? 1 million, 10% nationally, and 30% for veterans under the age of 24. So again, the focus was on that 30%, because they
That's
were mostly
higher than the national average, right?
Oh, it was way higher than the
Like
national
double.
average. Way higher.
Well,
So
I don't know, quite double. Sorry, go ahead.
But Joe, think about the stigma that existed at the time, right, Stacey? It was like everyone thought we were coming back from war broken. And they were saying it's the right thing to do based on perceptions that were built over time, that were in the news, that were in Congress, that were in the public's eye. So when they said that, I was just trying to stop the bleeding. I was just trying to address a problem at the time that I knew needed to be addressed. And the service member had to do work too. There was a reason we had this massive problem. And when you talk about bridging a divide and creating understanding, we had to train, educate, empower young people who are leaving the military first, not to think, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do next. I'll figure it out later. One, we had to fix the transition assistance program, and we had to teach them how to write resumes. We had to do all these things that we knew were a problem. And I let the employers say that because I knew if we got people into their companies, if we got Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen in their companies, that they would be successful. And literally, the problem was solved. So if you go back to 2014, veteran unemployment year after year has been lower than civilians. Month after month, lower than civilians. And that's one of the things that I talk about all the time now is it's not as big a problem as we're still making it out to be. I'm not saying that we don't want every veteran to have a job. We want to help the ones that need the help. What I'm saying is we need to focus on other measures that matter, like retention and underemployment, and those things that ZeroMils is focused on right now.
Yeah. I think you mentioned the broken veteran narrative. So when I first started reintegrating back into society, it was really hard for me because my whole identity was me in the military. I'd never thought about or never had any inkling because my plan was to go 20 years. So when my career ended abruptly, not on my own terms, I was not ready mentally, emotionally, physically. And speaking of physically, I actually hid that as best I could because I didn't want to be dawdled over or thought differently or have people thinking that I was like a ticking time bomb. Because I think there was, as you said, a perception about the broken veteran narrative where you've got to tiptoe around them. It's going to be difficult having them in our work environment because we really don't know what to expect. So I hid that from everyone to a disservice to myself. If I had just been a little bit more open, perhaps I would have given people the opportunity to better understand that I wasn't broken, that I was in the process of healing and wanting to get back to my new normal, whatever that was going to be. Thankfully, I met Joe along the way, and he convinced me to get a service dog, and things went rapid from there. And you can't hide your disabilities when you're walking alongside a billboard. So, but anyway, I'm really thankful that you brought that up. What is ZeroMils doing? What is your mission doing to help mitigate those broken veteran narratives and to help veterans like myself overcome those misconceptions within with different workforce?
Well, what you address is really our why. I think after I left Hiring Our Heroes in 2013, truth be told, I had my own issues with my health, and I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I had to leave Hiring Our Heroes. I was working 80 or 90 hours a week, and literally it was the worst thing that I could ever do because in leaving, I tried to save my first marriage, and I tried to get back on the right track with my health. And what happened over the next 6 months to a year to 2 to 3 years is I lost my identity. I lost my sense of purpose. I lost my tribe. I took worse care of my health. I started self-medicating. And I clearly wasn't seeking self-improvement, which are the things that we talk about at ZeroMils now. And for 3 or 4 years, I was in deep depression. And one day I went to an event that Bonnie Carroll had with TAPS and the Washington Capitals. I still have the hat. It's a Courage ball cap. I wear it all the time on runs and as reminders to me that could happen to me again. But I share that story because there was a Marine Vietnam veteran at that event with Bonnie, and he came up to me and said, "What's wrong?" It was a Father Lebrand moment. He literally looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you? Like, what's bothering you?" So I shared with him that I was struggling. And at the end of it, he literally had a Father Lebrand thing. He said, "Well, that's simple. Just go back to nonprofit work." God is my witness. The next day, I'm sitting at my desk at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, where I was a fundraiser, very successful, making a ton of money, working half the hours that I did at HOH. And I got a call from Korn Ferry offering me a job at a nonprofit, or offering me to come interview with a nonprofit called Thanks USA, a need-based scholarship foundation. I went there for 18 months. I was headhunted again, went to a nonprofit called Operation Gratitude, which you probably both know, the largest volunteer service nonprofit in the country. Have impacted nearly 4 million service members, veterans, first responders, and their families with care packages. But I share all that because at the end of that decade, I saw this growing trend with my business partner, who's actually the COO at Operation Gratitude, this growing trend where I saw companies, nonprofits, government agencies, everyone talking about our community in a way that wasn't a true reflection of who we are. Like, I can speak from a position of weakness and vulnerability about the challenges I had, but I don't want to talk about that as who I am. And we as veterans choose how we are seen, how we are heard, and how people speak about us and show us to the public. And listen, 20 years of war, we're going to have our challenges, but everyone and their mother in 2022 was still talking about the challenges and not the opportunities. It was like I was thrown back to the time when people said it was the right thing to do with employment. And companies are still saying we're military friendly. Well, what does that mean? Nonprofits are right.
What does that mean? I wonder. Like,
Definitely.
there
I'd
is
like
no
a
like.
business to be like, we're military aggressive.
I mean, there's lots of terms you can use. We came up with military thriving. So I don't want to belabor the point, but we saw a need that needed to be addressed. And our why is to change the broken narrative. Our why is to show young people that service leads to positive outcomes. We have the lowest propensity to serve in the history of the all-volunteer force. Only 9% of young people are willing to serve our country, right? And 62% of them, this is DOD's figure, not mine, 62% of them think that every service member leaving the military will have a psychological disorder.
Mhm.
Again, I am not discounting the challenges. I work every day with hundreds of nonprofits to address those things. I'm just saying we need to find balance. To change the broken narrative, we can't just talk about the struggles. We have to talk about our strengths. We have to talk about the triumphs and not just the trials, right? We have to find balance. So ZeroMils was founded in response to those trends. And our mission is to create military thriving cultures and communities by giving veterans, service members, wounded warriors, caregivers, families of the fallen, the 5 things that they need to thrive. And it's not just meaningful employment. That doesn't define who we are only to.
No, I love that. You talked about, the drop in recruitment because of what is perceived within our community. But I also wonder, like, has anybody really looked at the overall mental health of our nation, not just within our community? I think there's been such a spotlight on us because combat-related PTSD is so very unique, and perhaps because we have been leading the way to help other folks identify mental health struggles and to find different ways to live with or overcome those challenges. In many ways, I think it's an opportunity for us to highlight ourselves as a community of what other people who are struggling that haven't even served that could go out and do to better their whole health and wellness. Anyway, getting on my soapbox for a minute, but
No, that's good. You're right.
yeah, I think my stepkids, when they became military age, they both considered the military, but they looked at my husband and I and our careers and thought, well, one went on to be an EMT, for instance. So they're doing service, but not in the military. And when I asked them about it, they said, they looked at our deployment schedules and stuff like that and how that impacted our personal lives. And they were both inspired to do service, but they cited that ops tempo and things. And I was pleased to hear that it wasn't necessarily the struggles that mental or physical struggles that we had, that we set a really great example that no matter what you choose to do in your life, there will be mountains you have to climb, and how you're going to overcome those obstacles is really what makes you the person that you are. And I think the military community is definitely overlooked in that respect a lot because of that broken veteran narrative.
Well, I actually think you hit on something Joe talked about, and the civilian military dividing it and the potential to exacerbate that and not address it. So I worry sometimes that we're alienating our very community by not recognizing that civilian families have the same challenges. I used employment as an example. Like in 2023 and 2024, veterans had the lowest unemployment in 2 decades, and it was a percentage point lower than civilians. So there's still a mindset that veterans are struggling more than civilians, which isn't true. And if you look at other factors that we talk about, we aren't recognizing enough that we can inspire civilians to get through those challenges too. I mean, some of the greatest innovation for mental health and prosthetics, right, has been driven by what's happened to our community and us stepping up to inspire innovation, inspire care, inspire getting people from barely surviving to thriving. And listen, we all struggle. It's not peculiar to the veteran community. And I think we have a chance to lead. So when we say create military thriving cultures and communities, we're talking about what we know, and we trademark military thriving because we're trying to get companies to go beyond military friendly. We're trying to get universities to go beyond that, all to improve retention rates, all to improve the outcomes that will literally catapult their businesses to the best in their industries and help them make money so they can do more good in their community. The same thing for a community. You can't go to a state in this country without seeing a bumper sticker or a sign on their on the border that says we're the most military friendly state in the nation. Well, what does that mean too? We're bringing such value as veterans, and we have a chance to take that value and shout it from the rooftops. And I think we recognize the challenges. We talk about them openly, but we also say, my community helped me get through this. Like there's so much great storytelling, and you both are doing that every day. This storytelling is the way to bridge divides. This storytelling is a way to build empathy and understanding, but also make a difference. So think about a thriving America. Think about thriving communities where veterans are seen succeeding, leading, growing, thriving, and inspiring the next generation to serve. That is what this is about. This is not just about our military thriving. This is about our country thriving. This is about regions of the country thriving. This is about companies and organizations thriving because they take care of their people. They take care of their residents. They take care of their business owners and their civic assets. And we are the best employees. We are the best business owners and entrepreneurs in America. We are giving back and serving as volunteers at the local level at much greater rates. So we are in a position to show young people every day, that we are veterans, we served, and we are thriving as a result of our service and not in spite of it. That is our call. We earn the title Marine, soldier, airman, sailor. We have to earn the title veteran. We're not entitled to that. And when we embrace that and we go after it every day, like we did on the Yellow Footprints in Parris Island or in Great Lakes or wherever we were trained as airmen or soldiers, if we approach it the same way and we give back and we serve and we thrive, we wouldn't have the lowest propensity to serve in the all-volunteer force because we are not defined by the press. We are not defined by what's testified before Congress by the biggest organizations that are espousing the same broken veteran narratives because they stand to benefit from it. We are our own community. And if we want to own the narrative and change the narrative, it's on us. It's not on companies. It's not on nonprofits. It's not on government agencies. It's not on Congress. It's not on the press. It's on us. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create a military thriving movement. Just like Hiring Our Heroes was military friendly, those days are gone. It's time to move beyond that and break down anything that says to people, this is the right thing to do. It's right for America. It's right for us, and we're going after it.
But I think that circles back around to the same issue that we sort of started on in some ways. I think that two things happen. One, purpose is a Pandora's box. The moment you realize that you can have an impact on the world, and in the military, it's easy. Because whether or not you are having an impact, you are a part of something that's having an impact. And you're a part of a team, and you're taught to rely on that team, to rely on that man to your left or that woman to your right, and you rely on those people. We get out, we're not part of that team anymore, but we've got that flawed team mindset where we don't want to be the weakest link and we don't ask for help. So a couple of things happen. One, a lot of times the injured fall through the cracks, which sucks. And so an example of that would be, I didn't get any TAPS program whatsoever. I sat in the hospital for a year and a half and went home. Had to figure stuff out with an amazing wife and a family. And I learned a lot about myself doing that. Having said that, I, as an injured, all-American, big guy, when you think injured, American man, I can be on a poster. In fact, I am on some posters, but and dog treat bags. But the thing is, though, is when you put people on a pedestal, that's an empty purpose. And it feels like if you take somebody like me and you say, you don't have to work anymore, you don't have to do those things anymore, you're 100% disabled. You're like, in a weird sort of way, the economy sucks, but in a weird sort of way, veterans having to go back to work is better for their mental health than any other thing that we could do for them. Because again, they find that purpose and they have that purpose again. So I circled back around to that because, kind of like what we were just talking about, if our goal is to shift away from that broken veteran, we have to do two things. We have to stop babying each other. And that buddy thing where we check on each other, make sure we're okay, also needs to be a motivating, like, what are you doing? How can I help that? What are your goals? What can I do to help you reach that? And that's what you're doing, but we're stuck in that gap. Like, just trying to navigate through and survive. We're treading water, not learning how to swim because we're in the water and we're in that survival loop. So I say all that to ask you, what can we do veteran to veteran? And then going up a step, what can we do as a community of veterans to support one another? And the American Legion, like, how can we step it up? Because it's clear that we're on the right track, but how do we make it easy for veterans to do that transition and find purpose again?
Oh, I wish I could bring you both to ZeroMils, because I would have a great 2 additions to our team of 5, 3 veterans and 2 spouses, 2 active duty military spouses and Navy spouses. But you just basically talked about exactly what we're trying to do. So let me say what the 5 things are that every veteran needs to thrive, because you just covered down on a couple of them. And this is not anecdotal. Like, this is my experience. I shared what happened to me, but I will be really honest. There's research that backs all this up, and we're going to do further research with some pretty cool academic institutions that a lot of people know about that we'll be announcing soon. But
let us know what we can do to help.
Yeah. So meaningful employment is what everyone talks about in transition. Of course, you need meaningful employment to thrive. That could be through small business ownership. So that's the first thing. But everyone's stuck in that first thing. So let's talk about the other 4 things. A sense of purpose through continued service. We over-index on that completely when we leave the military. You can find that in work. A lot of work that we do, you can find it. But let's say you don't. You need to find it outside of that, right? So there are lots of nonprofits that I could name and that we work with in order to give veterans those opportunities. If you think about sense of purpose through continued service, you have to realize as a veteran that we give it through volunteer hours 30% more of our time to volunteerism than our civilian counterparts. So again, all data driven. The second thing is a connected community and a tribe. Like, we use the word tribe, but it's literally what I was. When I say these 5 things, I was getting these as a Marine more than ever. So we're not even telling young people when they're in the military that they're getting these things before they leave, and they have to look for them again. So meaningful employment, a sense of purpose through service, connected community and tribe, so you don't feel alone and isolated. Health and well-being, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional health. And lastly, the kit bag, right? Because
I didn't smile because of what you said. I smiled because you're like mimicking my whole mindset. I love
Same,
what you're doing.
Joe. Same, Joe. I'm right there with you.
I'm grinning because I love what you're doing. Sorry, keep going.
And the 5th one, because you wouldn't want me to go to 50 of them, we call the kit bag, right? You probably heard this term. When we were Marines, if you found something good that you could take to the field or to your mission, we would say, I'm going to laminate it, I'm going to put it in my kit bag, and I'm going to take it on my mission. So the kit bags are those things you need to constantly seek self-improvement in your life. Education, training, certification, being a mentor, being a mentee. Like, those things reinforce the other 4, but listen, the military provides you with opportunities to constantly seek self-improvement. I mean, jumping out of airplanes was one of them for me, but I wouldn't call that one of the bucket lists that I'm taking with me into civilian life. But those five things are exactly what service members, veterans, and their families need to thrive. So when you talk about it, what can we do for each other? We're all individual people and we all have different chemistries. So we all over-index on one of those five things, and some more than others. And listen, this is like a bell curve. Like, there are veterans in the bottom 5%, bottom 10% that are struggling, really struggling, not discounting it. I was one of them. And then there's a vast majority of us that are doing okay, doing good, even doing well. And then there's 5 or 10% of us that are really, really thriving. What I'm saying is the 90%, right? The 90% that are lifting up the other 10%, that's where the opportunity is. So we have to hold each other accountable. And I think the buddy check analogy is another beautiful thing. Like, I do that every day, every week. And on LinkedIn, I get more than 100 messages a week from veterans who are struggling, and I answer them. And you know what?
That's tough.
It's always related to these five things. It's always, and listen, a lot of those 100 are people that were doing really well just the week before because they're losing sight of it. So the answer to this is getting upstream, right? And talking to young people when they're leaving, before they leave, about these five things. Not just about, oh, you need to get a job, you need to get a job, you need to get a job. That's not all that defines us, right? What can we do to find those other four things? And if we see someone that doesn't have them, what can we do to equip them to get them? And listen, sense of purpose through continued service, the mission continues. Travis Manion Foundation, Team Rubicon, Connected Community, Team RWB, Wear Blue, Run to Remember, right? And those also take care of your health. And we can go on and on and on. We support hundreds of nonprofits, and that's how we connect the veterans. So when those 100 call or message me, I'm the one right back to them saying, try this out, try this out, try this out. And if I need to talk to them further, I do, one-on-one. That's how you solve the problem, Joe. The last thing is the Legion. So I will share a story about hiring our heroes, and then I'm going to pivot to this because I'm talking to the American Legion and the VFW about this, and I want to do this with the American Legion. So when I was at Hiring Our Heroes, I made an announcement with no employees, no budget, without being able to fundraise until I found the seed funding from an angel funder that gave me $3 million, and then I was allowed to. I needed to scale to do 100 hiring fairs in the first year and 400 in the second year. That's a really big vision. The way I did that is I went to the American Legion Convention in August of 2011, and they gave me a platform to talk to every person that was at that convention, hundreds of post commanders, district commanders, regional commanders. And I pitched them on hosting a hiring fair at a Legion post. That was it. And literally dozens of them flooded the stage. 236 of the 500 hiring fairs that Hiring Our Heroes did in 2011 and 2012 was at an American Legion post. And that is how we solved for veteran unemployment. And guess what? Those veterans in those Legion posts were setting up tables, getting coffee and donuts, engaging with young veterans, and their memberships were increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And what were they finding, Joe and Stacy? They were finding this purpose, connection, right? They were taking care of their health, right? Yeah. but listen,
calories.
But listen, like, the truth is, if ZeroMils could work with the American Legion at the national scale, we would be doing the events that we're doing in regions of the country focused on service, focused on veterans, engaging with young people at those Legion posts, doing very simple service projects like we did at Operation Gratitude or a food bank. And listen, a lot of the younger generation nonprofits that are doing purpose-driven work would flood the gates there too. So how can the Legion, a veteran service organization, make service the heart of what they do? And listen, this is part of how we build a military thriving community, or thriving American thriving communities, and change perceptions about service. And not just service in our military, service as first responders, in healthcare, in other industries that are vital to national security. So ZeroMils is going around the country. We've been to Dallas in March, in DC just 3 weeks ago. We're in Minneapolis on September 12th, the day after 9/11. We're in Charlotte in November, and we're bringing hundreds of veterans from employee resource groups, small business owners, with best-in-class nonprofits serving shoulder to shoulder with young people. And we're not making a big deal about it. We're just serving with them. And in the process, we're telling them our stories of service, and they're learning that we're successful in the private sector. They're learning that we're successful nonprofit leaders or public sector leaders. And they're saying, you know what? We were wrong. We were wrong about what we saw in the media. We were wrong about what we heard from Congress. We were wrong across the board. Perceptions will shift. Mindsets will change. And we will change the broken veteran narrative just by being present in service. So if the Legion wants to create a movement and change the broken veteran narrative, it's with organizations like ours that are willing to do the work at the local level, just like we did at Hiring Our Heroes when we changed veteran unemployment for the better forever. And you know what I'm saying will drive membership. You know what I'm saying will drive purpose, connection, health, constantly seeking self-improvement. I'm so passionate about this because this is the last thing I'm going to do in my professional career. This is my last chapter, and this is the one thing that I care about. And this is not just about service in the military. Our country and our democracy is based on service. It's foundational to everything that we know as Americans. It's foundational to our families, it's foundational to our faith, and it's foundational to our future. Young people want the same things we did when we lined up at the doors after 9/11, when every day was September 12th. These kids weren't even born on September 11th, and we are not reaching them and talking to them and engaging them in service, shoulder to shoulder, in the ways that they should. A Gallup survey shows that the 4 things that kids want is authenticity, purpose, connection, and community. Where are we reaching them? Where are we going halfway across the bridge at veterans to inspire the next generation to carry the torch?
And
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want to add here that I think part of the problem here is that with the breakdown of the concept of a tribe, and I don't necessarily mean, Sebastian Young, I'm not trying to necessarily get into that concept, but just more that many of us grew up in neighborhoods with tight groups of friends and things like that, or we're parts of sports teams and stuff like that. And so we know what it feels like to be connected to people. And I think that there's a digital connection that happens that shimmies its way between what the reality is and what the perception is. And I think that's one reason why we're having so much trouble reaching, is because they want this authenticity, because that's what they're not getting. It's this, everybody, you put every time you see somebody's nose disappear on a selfie, you're like, it feels like, why am I even on Facebook right now? I wouldn't recognize these people in a Walmart.
Well, that's all carefully curated, though.
Yeah.
It's not authentic and real.
Yeah.
I think it's what Kevin's getting at.
ZeroMils is going after creating military thriving cultures in a community, a thriving America where we're seen as leaders again. I, on September 11th, am going to really double down on my own passion for service, and I'm going to launch a Substack called The Service Project, and I'm going to do my best to reach young people, Joe. Like you say, I don't care if I look like an idiot on Instagram or the mediums that they use. I'm going to show people what service looks like, because I will tell you, when I was at Operation Gratitude, we did thousands of service projects. We all over the country, a million volunteers. And I will tell you the one thing that will always stick in my brain, always. People, when they're lining up at a door to get in the service project, they come from every walk of life, veteran and civilian, every race, every religion, every politic, every ethnicity. And when they were lined up, they didn't think about any of those differences. And when they got in the room for 3 hours and they were serving shoulder to shoulder, they realized they were more alike than different. This is much bigger than we think with our country right now. And I have a responsibility, just like I did when I started Hiring Our Heroes, just like I did when I started ZeroMils with retired Colonel Paul Cucinato, my best friend of 28 years and colleague. I have a responsibility to do more with young people serving. And if we don't, this isn't just a problem for the military. This is a problem in healthcare. This is a problem for first responders. This is a problem for teachers. This is a problem for the future of America. So I think every veteran has the same responsibility to share their stories, to find ways to serve, and to find ways to influence young people in doing both of those things. And it's a really easy thing to picture. We just have to do our part and live up to our full potential in doing it. And we shouldn't be afraid. We shouldn't be humble. We should be proud and courageous and really go after it hard because it's necessary. This isn't a question of if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Like, we're past that point. Like, we are really, really past that point. And I think we need to stop, reflect on what the military did for us, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and make a decision. And listen, when I was in the Marine Corps, I could not talk to young people about what they were going to do for their jobs. I was in no position. I was never in the private sector. How was I going to advise them, which is part of the problem now? And we certainly are not telling young people that are in the military right now that this is the most thriving time in your life. So I think every commander, every senior enlisted advisor needs to look a young man and woman in the eye when they're leaving the Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force. They need to look them in the eye and say, did you have a good experience? Do you realize you had these 5 things? And they need to look them in the eye. And if they say yes, especially if they say yes, then they should ask them nicely. Go out and tell the kids in your community that this was a positive experience that shaped who you are as a young man or a young woman. And that's not hard to do, but we have to do it. And listen, service comes in all shapes and sizes, all forms, and we don't need big institutions to do this. You could walk outside of your house today, idle a lawnmower right around 2:30 when school is getting out of session, like I did with my next door neighbor who lost her husband. And you could wait for a kid to walk by and say, hey, I'm in a little bit of a rush. I have a meeting in an hour. Would you mind cutting the grass with me to help Gladys, whose husband Barry died last year? She can't do it herself anymore. I guarantee you in that course of that hour, you could have a conversation about service, why it's important. And they would walk off feeling better about themselves. They would have purpose. They would see you for your authentic self. They would see the community and the connection that's made. And they would go on and carry the torch, just like you did when you decided to serve in the military and like you're doing today. I think it's really, really important that everyone who listens to you and the messages that you're giving take this on board, because that's the only way we're going to get it done.
Creating opportunity, man.
Alphas, Kevin has given us our marching orders, so be sure to visit ZeroMils website, zeromils.com, ZeroMils.com, and you can learn more about his incredible mission, him and his team, and how you can get your legions involved. And while there, don't forget to click on the social media links and follow them on your preferred platforms. By the way, if you're driving, don't try and click that phone. We've got it in the show notes, so it'll be there when you safely pull over. Before we sign off, Kevin, I want to thank you for your time, your service, what you're doing then and now. And is there anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share with the Alphas?
No, I would like to thank both of you for what you're doing too. I think it's really important, and you're a big part of the solution. So thank you for your service then and now, and continuing to do what you do. I would love to stay connected with you. And if there's anything I can ever do for both of you, just let me know.
We appreciate you, Kevin.
Appreciate you, brother. Semper Fi.
Semper
Thank
Fi.
you so much for hanging out with us today. And Alphas, please stick around for some SCUTTLEBUTT after the break.
Family and community engagement. The American Legion meets the unique needs of local communities. We are veterans strengthening America. We are the American Legion.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. Now it's time for some scuttlebutt. Scuttlebutt. What you got, Joe?
How dare you mess
I
up
did
my
that.
favorite word?
Oh,
A
we
New
wanted
Jersey
you to say
native.
it.
Oh, SCUTTLEBUTT. SCUTTLEBUTT.
Scooterbutt.
SCUTTLEBUTT. Well, hello, Alphas.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Alphas. It's time for SCUTTLEBUTT. A New Jersey native on first rescue mission with the Coast Guard helped save 165 Texas flood victims. You get to just retire. Like, I mean, at a certain point, you're like, I've done more than everybody else here, right?
I think that's
So
a
I
mic
can
drop
just,
moment for sure. Yeah.
yeah. But then it just falls into the water and you lose it. So anyway, American hero. According to the New York Post, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer is already being hailed as an American hero after his very first mission, helping to save the lives of 165 Texas flash flood victims. Raised in Oxford, New Jersey, Ruskin enlisted in the Coast Guard in 2021, and after completing basic training, not everyone has to go through basic training. Do you know that? If you're super rich and you get hired on as an IT genius, you don't have to do
that's
that.
true. Yeah, you can kind
Yeah.
of weigh that off. I think doctors kind of go through an
Yeah.
adjacent sort of training that doesn't include a lot of heavy lifting or forward lean pushes.
Yeah. I think you should have to do 1 million push-ups to get in.
Oh, I don't.
Yeah, at
I think
least.
we would be definitely thin in the military.
It'd be like David Goggins is the only guy left. But so he went to aviation survival technician school in Petaluma, California, before being stationed in Corpus Christi, Texas.
That's where I was
He'd
born.
been on call. Say again.
I was born in Corpus.
Oh,
Christi,
yeah.
at the Naval Air Station there.
Christi
Yeah,
or Corpus something else.
it's Corpus Christi.
You just call it Corpus.
Carry on. Moving on.
No, I wasn't being. I'm like, I don't know. Like, what you never know what the shorthand. Like in Atlanta, people sometimes say
No,
ATL.
the shorthand would be, we call it Corpus.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what I was asking. Because in Atlanta, it's ATL, but literally like 15 years ago, it was Hotlanta or.
I was told never to say Hotlanta by an Atlanta.
No, not anymore. Yeah, you can't say it anymore. But there was a time when a lot of people say it. But there's also Atlanta.
Wait, we're going to be going to Tampa for the convention soon. And what do they refer to themselves as? Tampions?
Tampons. I think it's tampons.
That sounds too close to tampons, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Hey, tampons, how you doing?
Tampons?
Tampons. All right, what you got?
So he was in Corpus, as the locals say, now that I'm down with the lingo. He'd been on call since November after completing all his training, familiarizing.
That is a mouthful.
Getting more familiar with the Coast Guard's iconic MH-65 helicopter and enrolling in additional rescue swimming classes as he waited to be called into action. The fateful call came on the 4th of July. They couldn't have planned that out better, right? As a massive summer rainstorm.
Yeah, taking a pause and saying, really sorry for everybody who was impacted and is, still impacted.
And it's still, and that's what's so, yeah, so you see when things happen in some countries, like they're like rebuilding within 5 to 7 days. And I don't know if it's an infrastructure thing or what, and I'm not trying to get into the politics of it. Because really it comes down to people's lives. Seriously impacted, and it's just devastating. It's a devastating thing.
Think about the emotional trauma that this is going to leave in its wake too. But anyway,
everybody in there knows somebody that was severely affected or who passed away. I mean, that's a tough thing. It claimed at least 80 lives.
Well, that's not counting the livestock and stuff. I actually watched a video from a horse racetrack down in that part, and the horses were like swimming for their lives. It was sad, and they were covered in debris, and it was horrendous.
Well, remember all the flooding in was it South Dakota and all that for a while, like farmland, and there were
my mom was impacted. My mom lived in Canton, South Dakota, and her house was flooded. Yeah, you just get these monumental floods, and we had Asheville, Asheville, South Carolina, was right up the road that had that flood. Anyway,
they would take bulldozers and make mounds to drive their equipment up on top of, just so to get them out of the water, and they would just sit there for 6 months. We drove up there to visit family twice, and saw the same farm equipment just stuck in the middle of a mound that was in the middle of a big field that they did. It was absolutely just, that whole situation. Like you said, it's the livestock, it's people's livelihoods, it's the farmers. It's just, but it's lives. So
Mhm.
Brian Winchell, a helicopter search and rescue technician with Texas Task Force 1, a partnership between the Texas Army National Guard and the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, called the Coast Guard looking to get boots on the ground and in the air for an emergency rapid response near Central Texas. That's a little bit outside our area of operation normally, but people were in danger, and we're a good asset to try and help people out. And these guys were asking for help, so that's kind of what we do. And which is I love it when red tape doesn't get in the way of common sense. And these guys were like, look, we're equipped to deal with stuff like this, and we can save lives. Like, let's do it.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, most of these people are probably locals. If they
Yeah.
are guard or reserve,
Yeah.
they're living right there. So of course they want to help their friends.
Yeah, I know people that when the flooding and stuff happened in Louisiana, stuff like that, who were from there, they just left their jobs and everything and went down. And like, I don't think any of them got fired. I think people who knew, it's like, just do what you got to do. People would jump in boats and fill them up with water and just go down there. But by 7 a.m. Friday, crews loaded into Black Hawk 60 and Coast Guard MH-65 choppers and took to the skies. It was literally the best air crew we could possibly have, Ruskin said. Their destination, Camp Mystic, a Christian girls' summer camp just off the banks of Guadalupe River, which saw some of the worst of the flooding. 5 campers, age 8 and 9, have been confirmed dead. I don't like that. I mean, that didn't mean that to come out the way it did. That's my word. Like, kids, I can't. I could never be a first responder. I could be a corpsman for any unit on Earth. I could never do that. It takes a special person with a special heart.
I can't imagine how awful it was for the adults that were caregiving for them over that weekend, and I mean, just goodness, if there's one of you for every 10 girls, how hard was that to have those 10 youths in your hand, their lives in your hands, and then for them to perish?
And 11 more girls and a counselor missing as well. So like we're potentially looking at 13, 14. This is heartbreaking.
Right. Yeah.
When the crew arrived, they were racing against sundown to rescue as many stranded flood victims as possible. All roads were impassable and the currents were too strong for any boats to get in, leaving helicopter evacuation as the only hope for nearly 200 survivors. As the crews evaluated the operational logistics, their goal was to move as many people as possible out of harm's way. But they were bound by the weight limits of the helicopters. During a briefing, they decided to leave Ruskin on the ground to triage the rescue mission, which is good to have someone there to do it. But that's a hard job. Triage is... I was like, sweet, sounds great. I'll be more helpful on the ground than I will be in the air right now. So that's kind of what we went with, he said.
That's
the rescuers...
that's definitely a generational remark. Sweet.
Sweet. Cool beans.
Things are really stressful. Sweet. Put me on the ground. I love it.
I'm sure there was an undercurrent of just sort of like dark acceptance there,
or was it more like sweet?
Yeah.
Or,
it was a direct quote. Sweet.
It is a direct
so
quote.
It could have came out anyway.
Sweet.
That's kind of what we went with. Sweet, he said. The rescuers loaded the first 4 to 5 survivors in the MH-65, and Ruskin set out to take a closer look at the camp, which was on higher ground than the flood-ravaged surrounding areas, where trees were snapped like twigs and twisted piles of cars littered the muddy ground. While on the ground, Ruskin tended to terrified and injured campers, many of them shoeless and still wearing pajamas from their mad dash out of the bunks in the middle of the night. In between comforting the cold, wet, and miserable survivors, and who were probably dealing with wondering where their friends are. This stuff is just crushing. Both kids and adults, Ruskin directed Army Black Hawk 60s and MH-65s to pockets of survivors to begin bringing them to safety. My main job was triaging. And then my second job I kind of picked up was just trying to comfort these kids and the family members and counselors, Ruskin said. I mean, you've got somebody on the ground that's organizing things, and, I have been that person before, and you feel like you have to set every part of yourself aside to deal with this stuff. And I just hope that this guy is okay, because once you turn off the robot part of you with handling this stuff, it can hit like a truck, you know? I hope that this guy knows that he needs to talk to somebody. Ruskin, wherever you are, man, do make sure you talk to somebody, because this stuff is not something that you can just walk away from.
Buddy check, Ruskin. We
Yeah,
need to hear from you.
that would be great. We'd love to hear from you. I mean, this is like probably the worst day of their life. And I love that it's that, you know, I know that he's feeling it, but it's their thing. But they're in a terrible situation. They have friends and family unaccounted for, missing, unknown status, and they're looking to me and all the rescuers for guidance and comfort. He said one of the hardest parts was having crying adults coming to him for help finding missing loved ones. We're back home and stuff, but there's still so many crews, Coast Guard, Department of Public Safety, Air National Guard, and all those Task Force 1 guys, as well as other local agencies. They're still out there. Ruskin said, eager to share the credit for his and his crew's heroics with the other agencies involved in the rescue. It's like, hey, can I help you guys locate these people? But I can get you guys out of here right now if we just try to remain calm. Just trying to comfort everyone as best I could is what I was doing, he said. Over the next several hours, Ruskin spearheaded a high-risk rescue mission under the worst possible environmental conditions, which in the end saw 165 brought to safety. So we got the majority of people out of Camp Mystic, which is awesome. Also, I love this guy. He's like sweet, awesome. Like, this is one of our people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. He had good parents, you know, who immersed him in the 90s ways of sweet and awesome. And I feel like we did a lot of good that day, but obviously it's still super sad. There's still a lot of people missing and unaccounted for, so the mission's not over yet. It's not over for us. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem trumpeted the successful rescue mission on social media, identifying Ruskin by name and calling him an American hero whose selfless courage embodies the spirit and mission of the Coast Guard. I love it when Coasties get some credit.
I know, they really rarely do, but they're there. You know, they're doing good work. And if that wasn't a shout out to the Coast Guard, I don't know what was.
And, you know, if I join the Coast Guard, I might still have 2 legs. So I will never say anything bad about the Coast Guard. Not that they're a safer option, but there's probably less bombs. I don't know. So Ruskin's reaction to her glowing praise was to share the glory with his fellow guardsmen. I just want to hug this guy. Like,
I know.
On.
I think
what an absolute gem.
That's also indicative of a true leader, and somebody who's, you know, somebody who knows their strengths and doesn't need to, you know, shout it from the rooftops. When you can recognize that it takes a team, which allows you to shine. That's, yeah, I don't know. You can't create that in somebody. You're born with it.
It's funny because anyone who's ever had good leadership, there is nothing that anyone could say to prop themselves up that sounds better to someone who knows good leadership than I couldn't have done this without my team. That's like green flag. Oh my gosh. Like, this is a good leader, you know, and that is the green flag. Like, you know, these guys, I couldn't have done anything I did if it wasn't for these guys. Starts name dropping people to get the attention off of him. And then of course he follows up with another fantastic, like 90s, like, honestly, I'm mostly just a dude. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are, my friend.
Yes, you are. You are the
dude. How about
Yep.
THEE? You are the dude. Yeah.
I'm so glad that this guy is making this really like heartbreaking story kind of heartwarming in some ways too. Like, I think I needed this. I'm just doing a job. That's what I signed up for. And I think that any single Coast Guard rescue swimmer or any single Coast Guard pilot, flight mechanic, whatever it may be, would have done the exact same thing in our situation. Oh, how many green flags can this guy carry around with him? It's like a standard bearer. This is what we were asked to do. And we're going to do it. Any one of us. If anyone else was on that duty that day, they would have done the same thing as us. We just happened to be the crew that got the case. You know what? When I was with all those Medal of Honor recipients, they kept telling me the only difference between you and me was opportunity. And I was like, that is a really wonderful thing to say to someone who is for the first time in their life dealing with feelings of inadequacy. I mean, you can't sit in a room full of Medal of Honor recipients and think that you're, the
Well,
guy
that's the,
anymore.
I think, yes, you have to have the opportunity to shine, but not everybody's going to, so you could be a step above. And I think in this case, this Coast Guardsman Ruskin
Yeah.
definitely not only had that opportunity, which it's a sad situation, but he didn't buckle. He kept his head, obviously stayed true to himself, and improved the lives of those there. Though it was a very
Somebody get that guy
devastating-
some leadership training. Like, let's jump
I'm-
all over when you see somebody like that. Like, you feed him. You know what I'm saying? Like, put this guy in charge of some stuff, man. I
we'll
love
see
his
about getting
attitude.
him. Let's get him on the show. I think we need
I
to.
would love that. I would love to
Ruskin,
talk to
Coast
him.
Guard, all you alphas out there who have any connection, help us get him on the show. All right, Joe. I live in South Carolina, so this story that I'm about to share really hits home. Police in South Carolina engaged in a not-so-hot pursuit as they chased a tractor excavator down a main highway for more than an hour at the speed of an average adult walks. Well, it depends on what adult you're talking about. I'm very slow. The
Yeah, me
chase
too.
reached speeds of 3 miles an hour early Sunday morning in North Charleston. That's just right up the road from my place. Officers on a different call saw the big piece of construction equipment with treads and a shovel in front go across Highway 78, which literally is around the corner from my farm, around 3:30 in the morning, North Charleston police wrote in their report. A few minutes later, they got a burglary call from a business that was heavily damaged and saw the excavator slowly heading away. Well, that's not quite the speedy getaway car somebody should be aiming for if they're going to break the law. Several cars immediately joined in a very slow speed pursuit. The excavator was going so slow that the cruisers would have to briefly stop several times a minute to not pass the construction equipment. They had their blue lights on and their sirens going and told the excavator driver over the loudspeakers that he was under arrest and needed to stop. Other cruisers blocked the traffic. The chase went on for, get this, an hour and 12 minutes before the excavator drove on the North Charleston County Fairgrounds property where it got stuck. The driver tried to run, but was followed by a drone until the police dog and handler caught up. Dogs out! 53-year-old driver of the excavator was charged with failure to stop for a blue light and 2 counts of malicious injury to real property and remained in the Charleston County Jail for bond of $22,000, according to jail records. My man, if you are any good for an excavator driver, you could have got yourself unstuck in the very machine you were stuck in. So
Yeah.
I have no
I would
faith
have
in
said
you.
my brakes were out. I didn't feel to stop. That's why I hit the building too. Brakes are just shot in this thing.
I can't stop. You should be like, oh, what was that? The movie with Keanu Reeves.
Speed.
I can't go below 5 miles an hour.
What he should have done is dove off of it. Like I can't, like it was like in a panic, like he dove off of it.
Awesome.
Then he could have pretended like it wasn't him. I was held
Alphas,
hostage.
When you're choosing your getaway vehicle, make sure that it actually reaches speeds over 3 miles an hour or the average walking person.
But there's a balance, and I'm sure someone has figured this out what the perfect getaway car is mathematically, because you can have something that is fast and dangerous like a sports bike,
a Prius.
But like you just barely get touched, and you're in the hospital. Or you can get something faster and tankier like an 18-wheeler, but that's probably too slow. So I'm sure there's a sweet spot, probably like a Raptor or something, like a F-150 Lightning or something. Just that's like that perfect balance between speed and tankiness. Although if you ever see anybody outrun cops, it's always like a Hellcat Charger.
You definitely don't want to do it in an electric vehicle because that's not finite. But then a gas, a tank of gas isn't finite either. So I think you just need to
I wonder if anyone's ever stopped and got gas in the middle of a pursuit.
Hold that thought, guys.
Time out. You guys got to let me fill up. This isn't fair. You have 8 cars.
Alphas, don't forget, if you live in Tampa, give us a shout and let us know. Our super producer Holly let us know that people in Tampa or refer to tampons, tampinions,
I think it's tampons, but we'll roll with that.
tampons. Let us know your pronunciation. You can share that with us. Yeah. Anyway,
I
that's all I got.
I was gonna make a joke about being shot and then like trying to tie those two things together, and then I decided I wasn't gonna do that
Let's not do
because I'm an adult. I don't know if you know that. I'm an adult. Alphas, we have fun with things, but it's a defense mechanism. Everybody's in the military knows, like, but the truth is, the stuff that we talked about today, the stuff that happened in Texas, that stuff is just utterly heartbreaking. And it could happen to anyone. So, when it comes to stuff like this, there's not a lot that you can do to prevent something like that, but just make sure you have a plan. Make sure you have a place to go. Make sure that if you're separated from your family, that your kids know where a rally point is, and have a backup, and have a password so that they know that when somebody is calling for them, that it's somebody that's safe to go to. These are all things that we can't stop. Acts of nature, acts of God, whatever you want to call it. But having some water set aside and the ability to know where to go when something goes wrong could really help mitigate some of the problems that some people have. In this situation, it's a flash flood. There's no time to do much, but we still can prepare for as much as we can and try to stay on top of things. That's kind of like the whole concept of PTSD, how it's so scary and it's such a thing that when you're out of control of it, it controls you, but it can also make you pay attention to how you do things and to make sure you do things right. And it's a hard thing to manage. And so this is heartbreaking, and I can't imagine what these people are going through, and our thoughts go out to you. And if somebody can get a hold of, what's the gentleman's name again?
Mr. Ruskin.
Yeah.
Our Coast Guard friend.
Yeah, Ruskin. Yeah. We
Holler out to
would
you.
love to hear from him.
You have some super fans out here, Mr. Ruskin.
We love that attitude. And Alphas, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. And we will see you next week.